Right, I'm down to talk about what it means for structural engineers, and it's interesting because the engineers declare and the architects declare, and all the other declarations, by and large, are corporate declarations. And I don't think, while that's helpful, I don't think that's the key to it. And I think that because if you're a structural engineer, unfortunately for all of us, you're a structural engineer for life, unless you get time off for good behavior. And even if you shift from one company to another company, what are you going to do? You're going to go from a company which declares to a company that doesn't declare, change your behavior? Of course you're not. It's a personal thing. And so I think that corporations' practices have responsibility, but in the end it comes down to the individual. And so I'm going to speak mainly about individual responsibility and how we can attempt to step up. As Martin said, being a professional engineer is a position of trust. Society places us in a position of trust, and with that trust comes responsibility. And so which I don't think it's a responsibility we can ignore, and it's not one that we should be using carelessly. And part of the responsibility, there's an inherent conflict between wanting to do things in an ethical fashion or in a sustainable fashion, with working in a business environment which is, certainly in the capitalist system, revolves around maximizing profit for shareholders. Because as soon as that's the principal criterion on which your practice is going to be judged, and however that profit to the shareholders is defined, you are then on a little bit of a hiding to nothing, because it trumps everything else. Sorry, I didn't mean to mention him. So I think that the issue is our first responsibility to our shareholders, or is it to society at large? And I would say our responsibility as engineers is not to our shareholders, first and foremost, it is to society at large. And we need to shift from the first position to the second position if we're going to be able to do anything in regard to this. Just in terms of corporations and practices, just a show of hands, just be interested to know who here is from a practice of less than 10 people? Less than 100 people, including okay, more than 100 people, more than 1,000 people, more than 10,000 people, more than 50,000 people. Is that ACOM? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Nuttall. Okay. Because I think that of course, a number of us work for very large companies, or have worked for very large companies, who have enormous clout in this regard. And if their shareholders are the ones that are calling the shots, then we need to make sure that this is aligned with their interests. So anyway, the engineers' definition of what engineering should be, according to the chartership of the civils and the structures, is along the lines of the art and practice of changing the physical world for the use and benefit of humanity, or something along those lines. And it's use and benefit of humanity. It's not for maximizing profits of your shareholders. So we all sign up to that when we become professional engineers, and we need to bear that front and center in our thinking. There have been some pieces of work done over the last few years, or many pieces of work done which looks at behavior and attitudes in the industry and how we are behaving. And you will probably be aware of a couple of them. I'm sure others will mention them in conversation, their own studies, but there are two that we've been involved with, are MICON, which is Materials Efficiency in Construction with Cambridge, and GIRI, which is Get It Right, which is trying to avoid error and wastage, both of which have a direct benefit to minimizing resource, minimizing carbon. And the MICON one, which is, there was a survey of professional engineers, mainly structural engineers, and it's pretty salutary reading if you haven't read it. The findings come with a series of excuses which are ease of construction is more highly valued than material efficiency, is one, for example. Clients don't ask for material efficiency, so therefore we don't do it. There are no significant penalties if things are over-designed. In fact, in some instances, your fees go up. There's no upper limit on satisfying codes. As long as you hit the minimum limit, you can go how high you like, which is crazy. The number of sets of calculations undertaken in design may be less than 10% of the idealized total to save calculation time. 40% of the people who replied to the Micon survey said they would design their house in a different way to the way they work in practice, because they're the shareholder. And it's worth also mentioning, in terms of thinking about how we could change our own business model in practice to deliver some of this. If you save 10% on structural materials just in this country per year, that pays for the entire UK's structural engineering fee in that year. 10% saving on materials pays for all of our fees. 20% saving, everybody wins. And it's not hard to get 20%. So that's on Micon. On the Geary, around about 20% of the UK's construction spend every year goes on wastage, errors and wastage, which have no benefit whatsoever. They cost money, they cost resources, they emit carbon and other noxious substances. And again, I'd invite you, if you haven't seen those, to have a look at both of those reports and dig down into them and think about what their lessons mean in terms of your own practice. I think, as I mentioned, personal accountability, and in the foreword to the Micon report, I wrote a piece about it's long overdue that we have a Hippocratic Oath for engineers. I think we should have, as a condition of chartership, that we sign up to care for the planet first, in the same way that a doctor signs up to care for his or her patient. And I think that there should be the equivalent of a general medical council, which holds professional engineers to account and makes sure that they do what they say they're going to do when they sign that make that personal commitment. So I think there should be, I don't know what a Hippocratic Oath would be. I mean, we could call it the Cookian Oath, or something like that. But suggestions on a postcard, but something which is, and I think it should be a mandatory part of becoming a professional engineer. If all professional engineers have that, then it's very difficult for people to go around and, if you like, behave badly on the cheap, because all of us will be saying to our clients, that's part of the way that we behave. So it needs to be all or none, and it needs to be done retrospectively. I'm afraid people who are already engineers and professional need to get on the bandwagon. In terms of practice behaviour, I think if the purpose of your practice is to maximise profit for your shareholders, it's difficult. There are other models. So we're an employee benefit trust, so our shareholders are our staff, and we're a registered social enterprise as well, which means that our core purpose, written into our constitution, is to provide ethical parts of the built environment across many domains. That's written into our constitution. We can't duck it. We can be held to account by our own people. So we chose to do that. Others have gone down similar paths. So rather than the model which is taking all of the profit, I think there's the thing about social enterprise is that you reinvest your profit effectively, or most of it. And so we reinvest our profit. Some of the things I've spoken about have come from that reinvestment. So in education, the work that Ollie's been doing along with other people in education has come from an investment. We invested in something that made no money at all, still doesn't make money, to try to improve the quality of education. And it's been significant from a small practice. So if we can do it, I think others should be able to do that too. So I'd encourage people to reinvest a proportion of their profit before it gets anywhere near the shareholders in the sort of things that we're talking about that are needed here. About 2 weeks ago, there was a memorial service for Jack Zuntz, who's one of the gold medalists here, who died last December. A number of us in the room went to that session. And we were reminiscing about what motivated him. And actually, what motivated him is what's motivating all of us, I think, even now. But in a nutshell, the pursuit of excellence, and defined in the way that you might choose in the context of the climate emergency, what does excellence mean? And I think that's something to think about. You know, it's not just designing the most beautiful structure, it's far deeper than that. Collaboration, he was really, and Martin mentioned it, it's really, we can't do this on our own. We need to collaborate with our clients, with our design team partners. So to improve our collaboration skills is really important. Design, he was always focusing on the power of design to provide a solution where none previously existed. You just need to know what the question is. And now we actually do have some idea of what the question is. We should be able to, as expert designers, provide design solutions to some of those. And education, and Tim's going to talk about it in a minute, in terms of the way that we change the education of future engineers and current engineers to do things differently. I think we should be shifting on the standards and codes side of things. We need to design for performance, and we need to understand what good performance actually means, not for slavish adherence to regulatory things that are often driven by different social pressures at the time they were written, not the ones that we are now facing. So I think there should be a proper review of what engineering performance means or what design performance means, and we should be then held to account to design for performance, not for slavish code-based design. And that performance needs to be, we need to be able to defend why we've chosen performance X rather than something that's twice X. Lastly, as a sort of mantra, the ancient Greeks in the room will know, will be able to translate kalos kai agathos, which means beautiful and good, both on the inside and on the outside. So it's something that is maps to service to society in the interests of providing for the people who live on the planet and the ecosystems that they occupy in the context of incredible industrialization and population growth. We should be looking for an answer which is beautiful and good inside and outside, not just a superficial answer, but something which is deep enough to last, deep enough to be beautiful intellectually. It's where we can get satisfaction, it's where we can make a contribution, and I think that's where we should be looking. So we should say, what is beautiful and good in the context of the climate emergency, and how can we deliver it? Anyway, so my three things that I think we should be doing. I think we should be reinvesting our profits before they get anywhere near shareholders in the things we're talking about. I think there should be a Hippocratic oath for engineers, for sure. And I think we should be designing for performance, not dumb standards. Thank you.